Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Hector Castillo, founder of BoldPM, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's great IT professional discussion. Today's topic is conducting better product discovery, and we're going to be discussing a simple three-step approach you can use for your product discovery efforts and ensure that you can effectively align your business goals and objectives to product outcomes. And before we get started, I want to give a special thanks and shout out to the great IT professional for hosting today's session, but also for providing free PDUs to anyone who is PMI certified. And wanted to let you know that in today's discussion, we're going to have three parts. One is we're going to be discussing why product discovery matters today, post-COVID-19, but also three steps and go into more detail about the three steps that you can follow to actually conduct better product discovery initiatives. And there'll be a Q&A, so you can feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window, and then we can get to them during the Q&A portion of today's discussion. And that'll be at the end of today's discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, current situation. Current situation is that right before COVID-19, many organizations, and specifically technology and software companies, had already begun implementing agile methodologies in the way they develop and implement products. And whenever there's a high level of uncertainty, a high level of ambiguity in the market, this is where agile thrives, because you can start working on getting to a minimum viable product very quickly, even before you have full knowledge of all the needs and the requirements, 100% of the requirements being completed. You can begin working earlier in designing and developing a product. But post-COVID-19, here's all the issues that came about. Many of us, as we're been working in commercial organizations that are selling products or services to other organizations or perhaps to consumers directly, are experiencing any combination of these. In some cases, delayed or lost sales revenue, cancellations and lost customers, being able to deal with really changing and rapidly shifting customer needs and priorities, and their buying behavior is changing significantly, but also changing dynamics in how we interact with customers and clients. And then we're seeing disrupted product launches, delayed product milestone events, reduced team capacity because now there's less of us working, and in some cases, we had to have a forced workforce reduction, and then new remote collaboration requirements, supply chain disruptions that we're seeing still now, post-COVID-19, and then changing competitive landscape. And of course, the changing competitive landscape includes the rising of global tensions, in addition to high inflation rates that we're experiencing now in this year. So one of the things that we wanted to discuss specifically is that these are all challenges that product managers faced in 2021, and many of them are more permanent, meaning that they're still working through some of these things in 2022. And so we're going to be discussing specifically why Agile helps in dealing with any combination of these issues that prevent growth within any organization. And when I mean growth, it's not just growth in revenue, it's about being able to increase your customer and diversifying your customer base and be able to expand across markets. Any of these things will present enormous challenges to overcome as you're trying to continue to grow your business or even bounce back to where your business was pre-COVID-19. And it's the right conditions for Agile, because Agile allows organizations to be nimble and be faster at doing something. And when it comes to product development, this is where most everyone is using Agile today. Some of the advantages of Agile methods include any of these things: better cost reductions, much better accuracy in estimating how long and how much it's going to cost to do something, increased productivity because there's a lot more collaboration, and then also improve quality at the same time that you're delivering higher customer satisfaction and improving the organization's return on any investment. So these are all the things as to why you want to be able to adopt. And actually what I see is that many organizations today are applying agile methodologies in the way they design and develop products, but not in the way that they're actually exploring and developing or actually validating possible new products that they could add to their portfolio at some point. And the whole point of product discovery is that it's a method of deeply understanding customers and where they're going and how their behavior is shifting and how it will continue to shift for different reasons. So you can really anticipate and offer them the right solution to their problem at the right time, and be able to have the solutions become possible new products that you can add to your portfolio to continue to add more value to your customers, or perhaps trying to acquire new kinds of customers that are part of the markets where you operate today. So some of the challenges that I've seen with people that are practicing product discovery today are any combination of these 5 things. They may not have always ensured that the new products have a high product to market fit, or may not necessarily always improve customer experience, may not be able to adequately anticipate shifting buyer behavior and interaction with customers, and also increasing perceived customer value is not always the right approach in the results of what they get. But also acquiring new or different customers. These are all things that may end up being failed product discovery efforts, because people will start building and then launch, and then those products don't really hit the mark in the marketplace. And it's because something very simple, and that is they don't spend enough time exploring. And exploration is about learning before they even begin building a product. Many of these organizations jump into solutions too quickly when they have agile, because they believe that they can make corrective actions, but not always the case, because they end up with any of these 5 things once they actually launch their product. And it's because they're not really doing the right things in product discovery. So today we're going to talk about the attributes of product discovery and how to do this right, and what would you get if you actually had a much better process. And we're going to be discussing the 3-step process by which you can do better product discovery. And the attributes of better product discovery are all 5 of these. Better understanding of your customer needs, you have better alignment to your business strategy and objectives, and you have design-driven customer experience that you can design from the very beginning, even before there is a product, and then greater customer and seller value. And also be able to embed new technologies as soon as they're available, or as soon as they're mature enough to begin embedding them into your offering, into your product. And another thing of people that I see that have deficiencies in the way they do or they conduct product discovery is that they begin removing or screening out ideas too early. And in a very early stage, when you're in the concept stage, how do you discern a good idea from a bad idea? The answer is you can't. Not without there's being some testing and validation going on. And that validation and testing is not against your internal team or your executives, for that matter. You got to do that validation against your target market. So you have to have a clear understanding very early on as to who your target market is. And you have to recruit them and do some market research to figure out whether that idea is good or bad, not from your organization's point of view, but from your target customer's point of view. Make sure you validate that, because other than that, you're maybe screening ideas way too early if you are allowing internal stakeholders to determine whether an idea is good or bad. And often, this is where organizations are getting away from what they're used to. And most organizations today that have been around for a long time are mostly doing a lot of exploitation and not enough exploration. In today's world, you need to do both, and it's almost equal as much exploration as you're doing exploitation. And you need to make sure that you're continuing to exploit the right way moving forward, as you're now looking to do more exploration. And here's what a typical CEO does. Most of the time, they're spending the majority of their investments in the company, in the organization, in exploitation only. and do very little or no exploration. Whereas in most startups, or even with visionary type of CEOs, they're doing almost like 60% of exploitation and then about 40% of exploration. And that's what most organizations need to do right now, as you're seeing so many changes in technology, in buyer behavior, and in the way markets operate. And realize that your business model has an expiration date, meaning whatever worked for you 3-5 years ago isn't going to work necessarily 5 years from now. And it may be already in decline, and you need to move and pivot your entire organization into a new business model in order for your organization to remain viable. That has nothing to do with product. It has to do with how you deliver the right customer experience so that you can continue to increase the perceived value that you're delivering to your target customers. Here's what Marty Kagan, author of Inspire How to Create Product Customers Love, says about product discovery. The whole purpose of product discovery is to quickly separate good ideas from bad ideas based on market testing and validation, and that the output of product discovery is not a minimum viable product. There is zero design and development done in product discovery. What you want is to have a validated and tested product backlog. And this really means that if you have agile development going on, you create the backlog during product discovery before you move that backlog into design and development. So it precedes product design. So product discovery is an iterative process that can show organizations what is the right product and the right business model to build for the right customers, and identify those very early on before you even begin designing development of any product. And those teams need to answer 4 critical questions in front of anyone before they can proceed on to the next stage. And that is, number 1, who is going to be buying or choosing to use the product if you were to create it, whatever problem you're trying to solve and the solution and that product that goes along with it, who is going to be buying it and who's going to be using it. Number 2, can the users figure out how to use your product, and how are you going to make it easy for them to use with very little training or very little, or with the minimum documentation that you need for them to actually start using it and using it more often. Have them see the value very early on. Number 3, how can your resources build it? Do you have the right expertise? Do you have the right tools, the right technologies already, access to the right technologies in order to make this, to build and not have to start necessarily from scratch? And can your stakeholders, can the organization stakeholders support it? Meaning your shareholders, your investors, your executives, and everybody else who's internal within the organization. Does it really align with your organization's purpose? And all of these things have to be answered, all 4 of these questions, during the product discovery process. And that is how you discern a good idea from a bad idea. A good idea will answer positively all 4 of these questions. A bad idea won't necessarily have answers for any combination of those 4 answers that we spoke about earlier. So let's move on to the next phase. Product discovery is done dealing with concepts, ideas, design details. There is zero development going on at this time. So this product discovery precedes product design and development. And you can see here that once you exit, you can go now into design and development, and then finally being able to launch and then deliver the product once it is launched into market. So today we're going to be focusing on that first phase, which is product discovery, and we're going to be talking about how to implement an agile approach to the way you run sprints or iterations that are all about product discovery. And you can think about these iterations as being sprints in which you're, number 1, identifying the right problems to solve. Number 2, identifying the right solution that best fits that market. And then number 3, understanding and having clarity as to what is the right business model to implement. And you can follow a agile approach to come up with what I called your minimum viable concept, and that you can then test and validate that concept against your target buyers and users to figure out whether they see the value that you believe it can achieve in the market. And you don't move to design and development until you have that clarity that you have a minimum viable concept. But you can still follow the same agile approach in the way that you carry out product discovery initiatives and the way you manage your team. So product discovery focuses on understanding, having clarity as to who are the customers, who are the users, and discover the different types of customers and different types of users that you have in your market. And market by market, those will vary in size, price sensitivity, all those things. And number two, you also want to make sure that you validate your concept against those customers, those prospective customers and users of your solution before you move on to design and development. And the same thing goes for your business model. We're going to talk about how you can validate your solution's business model before you actually begin design and development, so that you can begin working on things that need to be in place in, as product design once you have moved on to product design, figure out exactly what you need to do to your business model to ensure that you can support a product that is going to be ready for launching at some point in the future. But the characteristics of the business model are three. Using the design thinking, you want a business model that has highly desirable value proposition to your target customers. It's also feasible because you have the right activities and resources and access to technologies, suppliers and partners to make sure that it's a doable thing that you're asking them to build. And number three, very important, that it's a viable business, meaning that it's not just going to get you revenue, but you can also get you to higher profitability. Let's talk about the three-step approach that we spoke about earlier. That is part of product discovery. And you can begin in order, but very quickly, you're going to be iterating across any of these steps. Step number one is find the right problem. Step number two, find the right solution. Step number three, find the right business model. All of these things have to be done. And as you move on, you're going to add more details to any one of these boxes that are represented and that are all part of product discovery. And you're going to do this through iteration. And here's a framework that you can use to actually use this agile approach and design thinking combined to actually, number one, find the right problem and validate that problem against the target stakeholders, your target customers and users. Number two, find the right solution that satisfies or resolves that problem that you found, and make sure you validate and test that solution against the target customers and users. And then number three, ensure that you can also evaluate your proposed business model for you to take that product to market once it's ready to launch, and continue to deliver even higher value or a new value proposition to those target customers. And so before we begin with step one, we're going to talk about this quote from Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is credited with saying this particular quote: "If I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem first and then 5 minutes resolving it." What Albert Einstein says is that it's really, really important to ensure that you understand and have clarity that everybody in your team and within your organization agrees that whatever problem you have found, it is the right market problem to be solving. And that means that you got to do part of step one. It's all done part of step one. That left-hand side of the diagram, the product discovery framework, the double diamond approach that we spoke about, is all about having a clear and concise problem statement that has been validated and tested against prospective buyers and users in the market where you intend to launch that solution. And that problem has to be validated, number one. Make sure that you understand all these things that are part of understanding fully the problem space. And all of these things have to be answered in a problem statement. What is the problem? Who are the people that have the problem? How many other are there in the market? How would you find them and where would you find them? And how are they dealing with the problem today? Are there any alternatives today that have some significant shortcomings where it's not the best fit for them, that they are still looking for somebody who can solve their problems completely? And what tools or features are those users wishing that they have today? These are all things that will allow you to start creating a storyboard and the user stories for your proposed solution. But you need to figure out who are the sources of information, because those should be your target customers and users. And you can follow this 4-step approach that allows you to, number one, establish the need for a solution and justify the need in front of those prospective customers and users. Contextualize the problem with what's happening in the market and who are the competitors that are out there, alternatives that are out there today that are not complete solutions. And then finally, write down and validate your problem statement. Here's an example of a problem statement. You can use the chat window and tell me which product or brand solves this problem. Which brand or product allows you to store all of your files in one place and access them from any device you use without the need for a thumb drive or an external portal drive. So your files are always within reach as long as you have access to the internet, no matter what device you have on your hand. Tell me on the chat, and I can see that many of you are typing that some things already. So I see some of you are saying Google Drive, some of you are saying Dropbox, and you're correct. Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, these are all now competing products that all do the same thing, and that is allows us to store devices in the cloud securely. And now we have the beauty of that is that now we can access our files from anywhere with any device, as long as their devices have connection to the internet. And we can actually, we don't need to be carrying around a thumb drive or an external portable drive. We can actually change things and on the go as we're in different places without necessarily having another external device that we need to carry with us in order to have access to those files as we are moving around in our life. Here's another example of a sample problem statement. Which product or brand allows you to securely transfer any file that is bigger than up to 2 gigabytes in size that you couldn't otherwise attach to an email, because those have lower limits as to how big the attachment is. If you have ever done any kind of video transfer, you know that videos are usually much bigger, and you can't just simply attach them to an email in order for you to share those videos with somebody else. So what is a brand or product that actually solves this problem? And some of you I see are saying Google Drive. Well, yeah, Google Drive has that functionality now, but it's actually called a transfer, right? It's you're creating a transfer link, and then you're sharing that transfer link with someone else, and that transfer link has an expiration time, and if nobody uses it, then it expires, and then you have to generate a new one just to make sure that nobody can grab that transfer file later and get access to information they shouldn't have. So you can actually make this and secure it, make it secure in different ways by setting different expiration times and durations, and even maybe putting a PIN or a passcode that you need in order for you to be able to transfer and download whatever files you want to exchange. These are files that are much larger that you cannot just simply email. So I see that some of you are putting in some of the known products, but here's the one that is actually fairly new. It's called WeTransfer. If you're familiar with a former brand called YouSendIt, that was the start of a transfer link. The concept of having a portal where you can upload any file and then create a transfer link that you can then share that link via an email or via text or via a chat window somewhere that allows the other side, someone that you work with or a friend or family that you want to share that file, to actually download that file into their own device without the need to use a thumb drive or shipping an external portable drive. And that is WeTransfer. And here's a tool that we would use to actually find 7 different things that allows us to spell out and answer and define the problem space. And that is called the problem statement canvas. It's got 7 different quadrants that should be filled and then validated against target customers and users. And here's an example of how one that you could actually fill. And which particular product is the problem statement for this? Because this is the resulting, using that file, that canvas, here's the resulting problem statement. Post-pandemic, every workday in the mornings and evenings, for an average of 8 to 12 hours. Now, workers who are mostly working remote need to easily communicate and commit work items to be done and collaborate to complete assigned work items while working remotely. This makes executives and managers and workers feel frustrated and overwhelmed and angry because they don't really have a tool today by which they could actually collaborate when they're working remote. And therefore, they end up losing lots of time because of unproductive hours that they can't collaborate. Well, which product solves that problem? We're going to come back to that because this was solved in 2020, and it's one of the success stories post-COVID-19. Here's an example of an Airbnb business model. We're going to talk about more about Airbnb, but here's an example of another Canvas tool, a visual tool that can be used to actually start putting together a product or an organization's business model. And a business model defines how the organization makes money. We're going to come back and talk more about this example, but Airbnb had a pretty simple business. They don't own any real estate or own any hotel chains, but they're one of the biggest booking services in the world today. They're rivaling Hilton and Marriott, that are global types of hotel chains. And they're actually able to help guests book any property anywhere in the world for whatever amount of time. And they can either book by the room, or they can book an entire property, or anything in between, because that's what they have on their portal. And that's how they make money. And this is a model that was very successful. And the company became public very early on. Actually, it grew as a global brand. And we're in the middle of doing an IPO when COVID-19 hit. Not yet public. They were still privately held prior to COVID-19. And they were scheduled to have an IPO in 2021, which had to be delayed because everybody stopped traveling and nobody, could do any kind of travel for either business or leisure. And their business went down because they get paid every time somebody books and actually pays for a property so they can stay there. Well, Airbnb started now doing, as opposed to just doing purely in-person experiences, now they're starting offering virtual experiences online, which means you can now book a tour of the Louvre Museum in Paris without having to travel. And because of that, they actually partner with activity producers, tour guides, photographers, and videographers to create this virtual experience that people could buy on their portal and be able to experience without having to travel. And they launched this in 2020 very quickly. Within a few months of them contracting, and they were able to acquire funding to be able to begin the production of virtual experiences, and then went to market within a few months. And in 2021, they actually recovered lost revenue because of not enough people traveling to do either leisure or business travel. There were still some bookings, but not as many as before. And what actually took off was these virtual experiences that they would offer for a fee. And so for a small fee, you could do everything from wine tasting and pairing that was basically done, for you kind of thing, as well as being able to experience places that you wanted to visit but never really had a chance, because now you could actually get a virtual tour of whatever it was that you wanted to tour, all for a small fee with no travel required. And that was what they did to bounce back. So that's an example of very quickly pivoting to create a new value proposition and then be able to create revenue from that very quickly. Airbnb is one of these companies that have been doing enough exploration to know that they could actually pivot into those things very quickly. And it only took them a few months in order for them to begin monetizing on that and successfully launch the market within a few months in a very short time. Step number 2, finding the right solution. And finding the right solution is about understanding what is the vision for that solution and how is that solution going to become a product that you can sell in the market. Come up with the unique value proposition for that product and make sure you test and validate it against those target customers and users. and then be able to produce from there a product pitch and even further, a backlog. And if you wanted to do this, you can also have a product requirements document that captures the entire set of user stories or requirements that it must meet before it is launched into market. And bottom line is, in this phase, you're now defining clearly the solution space and answering all of these questions before you move on to understanding and getting a better idea of what your business model should look like. So, solution space. The one key thing that you want to start with your solution space is understanding what is the unique value proposition that you can offer that no one else in the market can, and validate and test that value proposition against your target customers and users. So you need to leverage what you already have within your organization today, your collaborators, that includes suppliers, partners, and distribution channels as well. Understand your competition and make sure that whatever you're offering cannot be matched by anyone. And it is difficult for anyone to try to match in that market. So this is where you start really discovering truly a unique value proposition that is hard to match. That's what you want to do before you move on anything into design and development. And the process of doing that allows you to empathize with your target customers and users, because you would understand also things that are key to not just have this product, but also figuring out how to price the product, understand how to package your product so that it actually looks and feels like whatever your target customers are already buying today and that they love, and understand why they're buying and how often, so that you can then start really understanding all these things that allow you to create a much higher value proposition in a way that you can create very quickly much higher business value almost immediately once you launch the product into market. And often the testing of this is not just about the unique value proposition, it's also about testing your unique selling proposition, your positioning statement as well. These are all different things that you need in order to market and sell a new product that you're about to launch. And you need to do this in preparation to launching a product. But it's very much better to do when you're doing this during product discovery, because you can then pivot very quickly because you're dealing only with stories and concepts and design details. And here's a tool that you can use. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas. And this tool was also launched this century. And it helps you understand from the customer's point of view, their gains, their pains, and the jobs to be done from their, and that determines their mindset, and allows you to then package your offering, your solution, your product to include the right gain creators, the right pain relievers, and the right features and things that can be built into the product to ensure that it fits well with the jobs that the customers and the users need to do. Here's an example of all three of these things that are part of the marketing and sales process for Whole Foods. The unique value proposition for Whole Foods, the unique selling proposition for Whole Foods, and the positioning statement for Whole Foods as well. And this can be done in product discovery, and then you align all of your activities to ensure that whatever you offer at your retail stores can match and offer all three of these. And that's how you make add criteria as to what you sell or don't sell in the retail locations where you have. Of course, today Whole Foods, is an amazing success story. They're now part of the Amazon family. They still operate as Whole Foods, but they started very early on, and they've built a lot of value very quickly by just having this done right and tested before they actually went to market. Step number 3, once you have the right problem and the right solution, now you want to make sure that you have the right business model before you actually go to market with this product. And sometimes some of the things that you find that your current business model is too deficient, and you need to do some work in order to ensure that your business model is offers something highly desirable to your target customers, is feasible. Whatever you want to build is going to be feasible, meaning you can do it realistically with no issues. And number 3, that your business model is viable, meaning that it's not just about creating revenue, it's about getting to a higher level of profitability as well. And that you can do that very quickly. And often you might need to disrupt a market already, especially if you're not the first one to enter that market. And often it takes additional discovery efforts to find the right business model to go to market with. So what you want to deal in here is answering any of these questions that are about clearly understanding what is the business space and how are you going to make money off of offering a new value that is going to be sold through whatever solution, which is the product that you're selling in the market. And another visual tool you can use, we talked about earlier when we talked about the example of Airbnb, is a business model canvas. This has 9 different quadrants that you can fill that define what is the desirability of your offering, what is the feasibility of your offering, and what is the viability of your business. Is this going to be highly viable business model or not? All of this will help you ensure that your product is successful once it is ready to go to market. Here's an example. We talked about a problem statement earlier, and that was Zoom. Zoom is exactly satisfies that problem of people who, all of a sudden overnight in 2020, because they couldn't report to work anymore, now they were stuck working remotely. Well, many of them turned on Zoom because it was already available and it was already scalable architecture, and many users turned that on, and it was millions, hundreds of millions of users that they gained in a few months in 2020, and that created already public company. Zoom was already a #1 video conferencing application, had a freemium model, and made it very easy for you to turn on a free account and then turn that into a paying account. And a few 100 million people around the world turned that on. Zoom was the most downloaded application globally in 2020. And much of that translated into tens of billions of dollars in higher valuation than before COVID-19. And yes, their valuation has kind of sort of like dropped a little bit since then, since the peak in October of 2020, because they actually gained a value of just over $48 billion in late 2020. They lost some of that in 2021, but bottom line is today, Zoom is valued at a much higher amount than any of the leading airlines globally, not just US, globally. Because this shows the top 8 global airlines in valuation around the same time period. And Zoom today is much higher than all 8 of those airlines today, even almost 2 years later, after they gain all those new users that many of them, they turn into paying customers. So the business model for Zoom is here as an example of the business model canvas for Zoom. It's a video conferencing application. And my guess is that if you're not using it today, you might be using one of its top competitors, because that's what everybody did. You're either using today Zoom in combination with Slack or Office 365 in combination with Teams, or a combination of both, depending on what your organization likes. In most cases, you have one or the other or both that dominate, depending on the type of organization, because these were the largest winners after everybody had to be stuck working remotely. So let's review. We talked about the 3 steps: finding the right problem, finding the right solution, finding the right business model. And this is what you need to do in product discovery. And you can use Agile methodologies to actually run iterations with a small team to perform product discovery and get you better outcomes. And the better outcome you should be looking for is a minimum viable concept and a much more detailed product backlog that allows you to have clarity as to how do you prioritize things in that backlog, and how do you move that before you actually move into design and development, and make sure that you have the right tools and the right things already going on so that you can begin design and development once you understand that this is the right thing to do that will lead to the creation of a new revenue stream for your organization. We're ready for Q&A, but I want to tell you, if you're interested in becoming a product manager or shifting your career into product management, I would strongly recommend that you consider some of the live workshops that we offer through BoldPM Academy. And more details are at the link at the bottom of the slide. And you can also reach out to me you can either contact me via email or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can talk more about where you're at in your career and whether or not this might be something that works for you. Also, I mentioned earlier that I was going to give away a free toolkit. So if you're listening to this or viewing this post-event, make sure you reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let me know that you actually viewed or attended this particular live discussion. And I will send you a link where you can download toolkit, the product discovery toolkit, for free. I will send you a link where you can actually download that product discovery toolkit for free. And I think at this point, we're ready for questions. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And be sure to reach out to me if you have any questions or any suggestions as to what are the things that you do today that are maybe working better for you. If you have any other methods or techniques that you're using for conducting better product discovery. I want to thank all of you for being here today. And once again, I hope to see you again at the next Great IT Professional session. Be on the lookout because there's another one coming up later in about a month or so in April. So be on the lookout for that. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Let me know how I can help you. Thanks so much, and you have a great rest of your week.